The kindest person you know is probably the most exhausted. And if you look close enough, behind that smile, behind the endless yeses, there's something most people never see. Resentment, rage, a quiet kind of self-destruction that psychology is only beginning to understand. Because kindness has a shadow. And when you ignore it, when you keep performing it anyway, it doesn't just hurt you. It creates something darker. Let me show you what I mean. If you've ever felt exhausted by your own kindness, subscribe and comment where you're watching from. This goes deep. We're taught that kindness is pure, that it's simple, that good people give endlessly and bad people take. But dark psychology reveals something more complicated. Kindness, when it comes from the wrong place, becomes a form of self-abandonment. And self-abandonment always has consequences, not just for you, but for everyone around you. Because when kindness has no boundaries, it stops being kindness at all. It becomes something else entirely. It starts in childhood, not always, but often. A child learns that being kind, being agreeable, being easy earns them something they desperately need. Love, attention, safety. When they put their own needs aside, they get rewarded. A smile, praise, maybe just the absence of conflict. And slowly, unconsciously, their nervous system makes a connection. Kindness equals survival. Being difficult equals danger. So they adapt. They become easy child, the one who never complains, the one who can be counted on to sacrifice themselves. Psychology calls this fawn response. It's one of the lesser-known trauma responses alongside fight, flight, and freeze. Fawn means appease. Make yourself pleasant. Dissolve your boundaries so you don't become a target. And here's what's dark about this. It works. In childhood, this strategy keeps you safe. It earns you the scraps of love you were starving for. But the problem is, you carry this pattern into adulthood. And now, you're not surviving anymore. You're suffocating. Because the mask you wore to protect yourself has fused to your face. Let's talk about what happens to your brain when you give endlessly. There's a phenomenon called compassion fatigue. It's well documented in healthcare workers, therapists, caregivers. But it doesn't just affect professionals. It affects anyone who makes kindness their identity. Here's how it works. Your brain has mirror neurons. They allow you to feel what others feel. When someone's in pain, your brain literally mirrors that pain. That's empathy. That's why kindness feels natural. But mirror neurons don't have an off switch, and they don't distinguish between healthy empathy and destructive empathy. When you're constantly absorbing other people's emotions, constantly putting their needs first, your nervous system floods with stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline. Your brain thinks you're in constant danger because emotionally, you are. You're carrying weight that isn't yours. Studies show that people who chronically prioritize others over themselves have higher rates of anxiety, depression, and even physical illness. Their immune systems weaken, their sleep deteriorates, their joy disappears. This is not kindness. This is self-erasure disguised as virtue. And here's a really dark part. The people around you start to expect it. They rely on your endless availability. They stop asking what you need because they've learned you'll always adjust. Your kindness trains them to overlook you. You become invisible, not peaceful, just invisible. Now we get to the truly dark part. Because all that suppressed need, all that buried anger, all those times you said yes when you meant no, they don't just disappear, they accumulate. They ferment in your shadow. Carl Jung talked about the shadow self, the parts of you that you reject, deny, or hide. And for chronically kind people, the shadow is full of rage. Because every time you abandon yourself for someone else, every time you smile through exhaustion, every time you ignore your own pain to manage theirs, you create a debt. An emotional debt that your psyche will eventually demand payment for. This is where kind people suddenly snap. They explode over something small. They develop passive-aggressive patterns. They start resenting the very people they claim to love. And they're confused by it because they think, but I'm a good person. I'm kind. Why am I so angry? The answer is simple. You're not angry because you're kind. You're angry because your kindness has no boundaries. Because you've been abandoning yourself for so long that the abandoned parts of you are screaming to be seen. Dark psychology reveals this pattern clearly. When you consistently override your own needs, your unconscious mind starts fighting back. Depression, anxiety, physical illness, sabotage. These aren't random. They're your psyche's way of forcing you to stop, of making you rest when you refuse to rest voluntarily. Here's where it gets really uncomfortable. Sometimes chronic kindness becomes a form of manipulation. Not conscious manipulation, but manipulation nonetheless. When you're always the giver, always the helper, always the one who sacrifices, you create an unspoken debt. People owe you. They may not say it, you may not say it, but it's there. And when they don't reciprocate the way you expect, when they don't appreciate you enough, when they dare to have their own boundaries, you feel betrayed. This is called covert contracts. You give with the unconscious expectation of receiving. But because you never voice that expectation, because your kindness looks so selfless, the other person never agreed to the contract. They didn't know they were supposed to pay you back. And this creates toxic dynamics, martyr syndrome, victim mentality. The kind person who secretly keeps score, who gives and then one day explodes with, after everything I've done for you. Psychology is clear on this. True kindness has no strings attached. It flows from abundance, not from emptiness trying to get filled. When your kindness comes from need, from fear of rejection, from desperate attempts to prove your worth, it's not kindness. It's a transaction dressed as generosity. So how do you fix this? How do you be kind without destroying yourself? The answer is uncomfortable but necessary. Kindness must start with you. Not selfish kindness, not cruelty disguised as boundaries, but real, honest self-respect. Because if you can't say no, your yes means nothing. If you can't protect yourself, you can't truly protect others. If you're running on empty, your kindness is just performance. This is where boundaries come in. And for many kind people, boundaries feel like betrayal, they feel selfish, but boundaries are the opposite of selfish. They're honest. A boundary says, I care about you, but I also care about me, and both matter. Research shows that people with healthy boundaries actually have deeper relationships. Why? Because their kindness is authentic. When they say yes, you know they mean it. There's no hidden resentment, no silent scorekeeping, just real, chosen generosity. You also have to tend to your shadow. Acknowledge the anger, the exhaustion, the resentment. Not to indulge it, but to understand it. Because those feelings are messengers. They're telling you that you've been abandoning yourself. And abandonment always creates monsters. Here's the practice. Before you say yes to anyone, check in with yourself. Do I have the energy for this? Do I want to do this? Or am I doing this from fear, from obligation, from the need to be seen as good? And here's the hardest part. Some people won't like it when you start having boundaries. They'll call you selfish, they'll say you've changed, and you have. You've stopped abandoning yourself. And relationships built on your self-abandonment will crumble. That's not a loss. That's liberation. The dark side of kindness isn't that kindness is bad. It's that kindness without self-respect becomes self-destruction. And self-destruction helps no one, not you. Not the people you're trying to save. Real kindness flows from wholeness, not from wounds. It includes you in the equation. It says yes when it means yes and no when it means no. And that kind of kindness, it doesn't create resentment. It creates freedom. So the next time someone tells you you're so kind, ask yourself, is this kindness or is this fear? Is this love or is this performance? The answer will tell you everything. For more dark psychology breakdowns like this, check out my newsletter in the description. Real insight into the hidden patterns that shape human behavior.